Good morning. Welcome to the King's Reports News Hour for the 25th day of the fifth month by the heavenly calendar. I think a couple of days ago I got the date wrong. But anyway, today is the 25th day of the fifth month by the heavenly calendar. And we're in the 16th year of Chanukyi. Yep, we're all squared away on that. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Chanukyi Kyungjin. Let's go take a tour around the kingdom and see what's going on. Right now in Chongpyeong, Tennessee, 62 degrees, mostly sunny, 85 for high today. Fog will lift this morning, mostly sunny and pleasant and clear. Tonight, getting down to 62. father's hometown, Cheongju, in North Pyongan province in Korea, near Pyongyang there. 80 degrees right now and sunny, mostly cloudy tonight, getting down to 58. Tomorrow, high of 82. Nice, less humid, partly sunny in the morning, followed by afternoon sunshine. And then at the Cheonryung Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, 64 degrees, mostly sunny right now, getting up to 83 today. Mostly sunny and breezy throughout today. A thunderstorm on the prowl this afternoon. Yes. Watch out for those things in Pennsylvania that are on the prowl. You don't want to get close to them. And then tonight, 59 degrees for a low, clear. And at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground, high of 93 today, mostly sunny and humid, with a thunderstorm in 1 or 2 spots. Tonight, low of 75, mainly cloudy and humid. And at the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently raining, 76 degrees, and it's going to be overcast, humid with showers tonight. Some heavy, low of 73 degrees tonight. Tomorrow, high of 77, a drenching thunderstorm in the morning, thick cloud cover and very humid. And then let's see here, we have the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 85 degrees, partly cloudy right now, getting down to 71 tonight. Tomorrow remaining very warm and humid with clouds yielding to sun. And at Ilan in Taiwan, currently 86 degrees, cloudy, getting down to 77 tonight. The evening shower in the area, otherwise clear to partly cloudy. Tomorrow, high of 92 and rather cloudy and humid. So where did we have the 93? We had the Liberty Rock, right? Was 93 today. Yeah, so that takes the prize today. All right. All right, so let's go to Father's Word, and we're in the book on sin and restoration through indemnity. And we're in the chapter 2, section 3.1. Originally, human beings were to inherit true life and true lineage centered on God and have the authority of the universe and live in glory. But because of the fall, human beings received the satanic lineage, satanic life, centering on Satan. Satan is the enemy of God. He is the enemy. He is God's enemy of love and an adulterer. He is an adulterer because he has stolen a woman from the person who loved her. All right? Okay. And of course, the king describes Satan even more as the groomer, right? A child groomer, because Eve was in her teens then. Father says that she was in her teens. Our Father's teaching is very clear that Adam and Eve were created as sinless but immature babies. They were created as babies, and they went through the growing period, and they were to be protected and raised or protected by the archangels, especially Lucifer, was to educate them. Lucifer had all the knowledge and wisdom about God's creation. He knew how he created dandelions. He knew how he created tigers and lions and elephants and all that kind of stuff. And it was up to Lucifer to teach the children of God these things about these things. And I think it is only natural, actually, that when Lucifer felt a lack of love, or he felt, because he was working with God, right, for billions of years, he was working with God. He was number one there with God, and then God created someone above him, right? And I think it was only natural that Lucifer would feel a kind of a diminished love or lack of love, shall we say. And this would not have been a problem. This would not have been a problem if Adam and Eve had maintained God's commandment. And that is why God gave them the commandment, because God could see this coming. He could see that this would be Lucifer's reaction to his perceived demotion, all right? Perceived demotion. It was not actually a demotion. God still loved him the same way as before. But there was, relatively speaking, there was someone else that God loved even more, because Lucifer, of course, only had a spirit body, but then Adam and Eve had both the spirit and a physical body, and they were God's direct lineage, whereas Lucifer was not. So, uh, as Father said, if Adam and Eve had maintained their responsibility, and in particular, if Adam had maintained his responsibility, then even if Eve had fallen, if Adam had maintained his responsibility, then things could have been brought back on track relatively quickly. But both of them fell. And what this meant then was that God's lineage no longer existed on the earth. So this was not a situation that could be resolved just by forgiveness. Okay, well, make sure you don't do it again. No, it went way beyond that, because now the lineage that God had planted on the earth had been destroyed. And so now God had to send another Adam. God had to send another Adam. But and he, of course, could have done that very quickly. With this is what Cain and Abel was all about. I could have done it in the generation of Cain and Abel, if, again, things had worked out well with Cain and Abel. But so one step at a time, one step at a time, one step at a time. There were several opportunities for God to send his son again, the second Adam again, to send the second Adam, but things didn't work out. And finally, at the time of Jesus, God was able to have his son come to the earth once more, be on the earth once more. So it's been a very complicated course, and much of the complication has been the result of the human failure to fulfill our portion of responsibility. It didn't have to be this way. But now we're, well, even after the most recent failure of responsibility, referring now to Hak Ja Han in 2013, even after that failure, still God's providence is continuing. And fortunately, the second king of Cheongguk, Hyung Ji-moon, did fulfill his responsibility by breaking away from Hak Ja Han, a very painful thing that he had to do, to break away from the mother that he loved so much and probably loves more than any other person alive, to break away from her and then to connect with Father and to set the conditions for Father's providence to be able to continue. Certainly, we owe him a great debt of gratitude. In fact, someday I think humanity will realize that all of humanity, past, present, and future, owe the second king a great debt of gratitude for his courage to stand up for righteousness when it was difficult to do so, and when the other path, the path of unrighteousness, was so easy and so beneficial to him personally, at least in the short run. All right, so that's our lesson today. Thank you very much to Heavenly Father for bringing us to this lesson today. I don't have any updates on what is happening to Hak Ja Han right now, but the new administration is looking very closely at the scandal involving the former First Lady, and of course Hak Ja Han is involved in that, or is alleged to be involved in that. And so I'm sure they'll be looking at her very closely. And she continues to be on this list of people, as far as I know, on this list of people who are not allowed to leave the country. As far as I know, that is still the case. All right, so let's go and see what is happening now. So President Trump is giving the world basically a 2-week reprieve from war with Iran. He says he's going to decide on Iran within 2 weeks. Interesting. Some people who are skeptical say, yeah, he'll say one thing one day and another thing the next day. And yes, you can't deny that that's certainly true. But the White House is saying that there's a realistic chance that there may be a diplomatic solution that could come about within the next 2 weeks. And so that's the reason for this delay. It's going against the collective judgment of the American intelligence community that has concluded that Iran is not seeking a nuclear weapon. I sure hope he is able to divine what is the correct course. And right now, I think really divine guidance is probably the only thing that he can depend on. Of course, the intelligence community. I mean, he doesn't owe the intelligence community anything, right? It was the intelligence community that lied about the Russia Gate and did their very best to destroy him. And now they come to him and say, "Oh no, Iran has not been seeking a nuclear weapon since 2003." And I'm sure that President Trump, in his mind, is saying, "Yeah, right. Yeah. You guys, what?" Really, he needs to seek divine guidance for this on this one. And I certainly hope that another course of action can be worked out that will not require the U.S. to use lethal force against Iran directly. President Donald Trump will decide whether to take military action in Iran within the next couple of weeks, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said on June 19th. I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, based on the fact that there is substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. And the word within, he could make it today and say, hey, I said within, right? It doesn't have to wait 2 weeks. But also previously said, I don't want to make a decision until the absolute last possible second. So let's continue to pray for him anyway. Trump has been holding meetings in the Situation Room on what to do about Iran. He said he may or may not get involved in the conflict. Trump's goal when it comes to Iran is not regime change, but rather ensuring that the Islamic Republic cannot obtain a nuclear weapon, Leavitt said. He has repeatedly said that Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. Let's be very clear, Iran has all that it needs to achieve a nuclear weapon. All they need is a decision from the supreme leader to do that, and it would take a couple of weeks to complete the production of that weapon, which would, of course, pose an existential threat not just to Israel, but to the United States and to the entire world, Levitt said. So this thing about regime change, there's sort of, and we have to be very careful about what sources of information we rely on. But the exiled crown prince, or the exiled prince, is sort of raising his profile more and more, and he seems to think that he may have a chance to go back to Iran and take his rightful place as the ruler of Iran. Now, this is coming from the exiled community, Iranian community, and that in itself makes me a little bit skeptical about it, because I've said before, we have to be skeptical about all information sources, but we especially have to be skeptical about people who say things that we want to hear. And these people who have been exiled from Iran have been, in exile, have not been able to return to their country for decades, maybe since the Carter administration, for more than about 50 years. And so they are susceptible to believe, they are apt to believe people who say, look, the Iranian people are rising up, and the Ayatollahs are losing power, and it's only a matter of time before the situation be prepared where His Royal Highness can return and take his rightful place. They are apt to believe that kind of thing, even if it's not true, and it could be true. It could be true, but it might also not be true, and it might also just be the product of wishful thinking in one part, and also it could be kind of a sneaky way to get the U.S. involved. Also, I blame the Iraqi exile community for getting us into the Second Iraq War, saying that Saddam Hussein's got all these weapons of mass destruction. That information came from, as I understand, a lot of the information anyway came from from one particular Iraqi leader who was exiled from Iraq, and so he sort of manipulated America into getting into the Iraq War, I believe. And so for that reason, we need to be doubly and triply skeptical about this. But we certainly can pray. We can certainly pray that the people of Iran will, in fact, take this opportunity to stand up. They need to stand up. As I mentioned before, freedom really needs to be won by the people who are to be freed. If you just sit around waiting for someone to free you, to give you freedom, then, well, that freedom is not really genuine freedom in the first place, and it's probably not going to last long. Some other tyrant is going to come along. So let's continue to pray for President Trump, that he can receive and that he can intuit God's guidance and follow that guidance, and have the courage to follow that guidance, whatever it may be. But let's also pray for the people of Iran, that they can take this opportunity, if it is an opportunity, to free themselves from the tyranny of the mullahs that has been going on now for roughly 5 decades. It doesn't necessarily say anything about the core of Islamic teaching. When we say that the mullahs have certainly been tyrannical, and they have exploited the population, and they have robbed their population of their God-given freedoms. And now in these last days, when the king is working to free the people of China, it would be wonderful if the people of Iran could also benefit from that effort, from that Cheongsong that we are offering, and also be able to free themselves And let's pray for the people of China as well. Okay. Let's pray for the people of China as well, that they can free themselves. We still have these videos coming out about, Xi Jinping is being replaced, and he's lost power and all that kind of stuff. Well, I still have not seen any concrete evidence of that. I've not seen any concrete evidence of that. So we'll have to, but anyway, God is working. We know that. We know that God exists. We know that He is working to free His people worldwide. He's working to free the people of North Korea. He's also working to free the people of the United States of America, by the way, and all people from the clutches of Satan. And so we can continue to pray for everyone in the world, that everyone can find God and be freed from the satanic lineage that keeps us imprisoned. All right. Okay, I think that's all that we need from that story, I guess. Okay. All right. Also, let's see here. This is an interesting, and I guess it's a good story. Illegal immigrant population down 1 million since Trump took office, research group says. And if you read the actual way that they calculate this, it's pretty much of a ballpark guesstimate sort of thing. So I don't know if 1 million, but probably it is true that the immigrant population or illegal immigrant population has declined since January 20th. Now, today is actually the 5th month anniversary of President Trump's inauguration. And I think during the 5 months, it can be said that the illegal immigrant population has declined, and perhaps by a significant number, including the self-deportations, right? And people being caught and so forth. I still think it's unfortunate that people who are paying taxes, people who have jobs, or even people who are running businesses and are employing people are being caught and sent to a country that they have not known for decades and decades. I still think that's unfortunate. I understand it, and it was actually what I was expecting to happen before President Trump's inauguration, and that's why I told people, make sure that when you walk around, that you, especially if you don't look like me, if you look like me, you're probably not going to be in much of a trouble. But if you don't look like me, then make sure you have your green card, or make sure you have other documentation, passport if you have one. Make sure you have it on you at all times. Not that it will always protect you, but make sure that you, because it is unfortunate but understandable that the pendulum has swung way the other way. And I would like for them to focus on the millions that Biden brought in, right? And if someone has been here for 20, 30 years and they're paying taxes and employing people, yeah, come on, I mean, what? How is that contributing to national security or the national interest if we deport people who are paying into the system? They're paying not only income taxes, but also they're paying into the Social Security system and into the Medicare system, and we want to deport them? Does not make sense to me. But anyway, it is the times that we are living in, and I'm sure that it will pass. I'm sure that it will pass, and perhaps some of these people who are being deported will be able to make their way back somehow in the future. Okay. So these people said that our preliminary estimate is that there are 14.8 million illegal immigrants in the country in May 2025, 1 million fewer than we estimated in January of this year. And this is the Center for, what is it? What do they call themselves? The Center for Immigration Studies. And the way they figured is kind of really, back of a napkin ballpark figure, so I'm not sure how reliable this figure is. The Department of Homeland Security estimated that 11 million illegal immigrants were in the country as of January 2022. That's already 3 years old. President Trump has said that the true figures could be as high as 21 million, while the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, suggested that the number could be up to 30 million. So, conclusion, what's the bottom line? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows how many are actually in America. Okay. Right. And nobody knows because America really does not keep that close track. You know, I'm here in and Korea, Japan, these countries pay pretty close track of who's here and also who overstays their visa. Um, I got a letter. Anyway, as my period of stay came close to expiring, I got a letter from the Korean equivalent of the Immigration Service, saying, okay, your status is about to expire, so if you want to stay longer, come on in and extend your stay, and otherwise get out. Well, they didn't say that, but yeah, sort of implied it, I guess. And so, of course, they had my address and so forth, and they do keep pretty close contact, and they have also in Japan. Actually, you can go on YouTube. You can see that the Japanese police have these teams of officers that go around arresting people who have overstayed their visas, and they make pretty quick work of them. So countries like these, they're not going. They know how many. They know pretty much exactly how many people are in the country illegally. Of course, Japan and Korea, it's pretty difficult to come here illegally in the first place because you have to come by sea, and it's difficult to sneak in. But anyway, America really don't know how many people are here illegally, but fewer now than there were 5 months ago. I think that's probably certainly true. And so President Trump's approval rating on the Rasmussen poll, the daily Rasmussen poll, has been steady now at 52%. Overall rating steady at 52%, with something like 48% disapproving. And given the disarray of the Democrat Party, I would say that right now he's in pretty good shape to face the midterm elections next year. Of course, we have 16 months to go. So we'll have to see what happens in the next 16 months. But we'll have to see. And with the big, beautiful bill passing, it looks like one way or another, they're still fighting over it, but that includes tax breaks, and it includes other stuff that people are going to like. So I think right now it's looking fairly good that the Republican Party are going to be able to increase the margin in the House and perhaps also by 1 or 2 seats in the Senate as well. That's what it looks like now, but we'll have to see what happens. One thing that some people are warning about is that there could be something happening in the next months or next year, next 12 months, that would be on the order of 9/11 or Pearl Harbor. And right now, there's a very large portion of the American population, especially voters, that are not in favor of getting into a real war with Iran. The United States getting into a war with Iran. But of course, that was also true just before World War II, just before Pearl Harbor. Most Americans, or a large segment of Americans, probably the majority of Americans, were reluctant to get involved in war in Europe, and even more reluctant to get involved with a war in Asia. But Pearl Harbor changed that in an instant. Overnight, the country was united that okay, we got hit by Japan, so let's go after Germany. That's the way these logic work, logic works. we got hit by Saudi Arabia at 9/11, so let's see who shall we go to war with? Oh, I know, Afghanistan. Oh, and Iraq as well. It's crazy. You gotta laugh. But there are people who warn that there could be some incident, whether it is a actual terrorist incident or a false flag. Could be either way, but the effect will be the same. That the country will suddenly overnight be united to go to war with whoever is perceived to be behind this, whatever country is perceived to be behind this incident, and that may be Iran. That may be Iran at that point. So let's be careful, and let's especially be on the lookout for something like that. And when or I'm not sure, I should say when, but if it happens, let's not get caught up in the frenzy. I'm sure, those of us who remember 9/11 remember the frenzy and the actual fear and the frenzy that really united the country pretty close to 100% in the days after 9/11. And President Bush could pretty much do anything he wanted, and he did. And so they passed the Patriot Act, which is not actually very patriotic. And the Department of Homeland Security was created, and we lost a lot of freedoms as a result of that incident and the reaction to that incident, because the country was so united and was willing to go along with pretty much anything that President Bush and the globalists wanted to put before us. The country was pretty much going to go along with anything at all. And that kind of thing may happen again. And so we need to be careful that we don't get caught up in that kind of frenzy. Not that we'll be able to do much about it, but at least as, blessed to families, let's keep a level head no matter what may happen. And be prepared also. Be prepared. It could be an attack on our infrastructure, such as the power grid, or we don't know. We don't know. We don't know what these people are planning. But we do know that there are people whose job it is, and whose career it is, and whose absolute 100% commitment it is to bring down the United States, to bring the United States to its knees. And they are planning all sorts of things, and they try to execute something, and the FBI gets in the way, or maybe they're even false flag people trying to do something, perhaps certain allies. I won't say who, that want America to go to war on their behalf. I won't say who. Maybe they may plan some sort of a false flag. There are all sorts of possibilities, But human emotion is a strange thing. And there are people who are very good at manipulating human emotions, especially on the level of the entire country, 300 million Americans, 30 or 40 million Americans, manipulating us in that way. So we need to be careful, and we need to always keep a perspective of God's perspective. Okay. All right, let's see. Yeah, let's see what else is going on today. Oh yeah, so I wanted to. I guess this is something I've been meaning to cover for a while now, and finally perhaps have an opportunity to do that today. This thing called the Genius Act, um, and the Senate passed it. Oh, yesterday. Yes, no, yesterday or the day before, 18th. Okay, so yeah. Anyway, recently passed this thing called the Genius Act, and it's a law governing cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. And there are some people who are very much still against this. Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, is very much against this. Others are very much in favor of it. I see that the New York Times recently published a opinion piece by someone who is very much against it, saying that this is going to bring economic chaos. But there are many, many aspects to this, but mainly they're focusing on the stablecoin aspect of this. And just recently, Scott Bessent, the Secretary of Treasury, was in an interview, and he was asked whether Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies may threaten the dollar. And interestingly, instead of answering the question head on, he immediately segued into stablecoins and says, "Oh no, stablecoins are going to save the dollar." Well, the interview did not ask about stablecoins specifically. The interview asked about cryptocurrencies in general, but he focused right in on stablecoins. He said, "No, stablecoins are going to save the dollar." And this is the main argument of the Trump administration and of Scott Bessent. And he's a former hedge fund manager, and so he, I guess, knows a lot about markets and so forth. And I think, as you know by now, stablecoins are cryptocurrencies that are pegged to a certain stable asset, such as the dollar, which is not all that stable, right? It's relatively stable. It certainly has a lot less volatility than something like Bitcoin. And these stablecoins are issued by companies. The largest one is called Tether, and they are issued by a company that till recently was located in Hong Kong, but I believe they may have already shifted their headquarters to El Salvador or someplace. I'm not sure. Anyway, they're issued by companies, and this law, according to the piece in the New York Times, is going to allow other companies, such as Walmart, such as Google, or anybody else, to issue stablecoins as well. And this guy is saying that this is going to bring about financial chaos. In the first place, when people are using these coins, they're actually not, when we say coins, they're actually strings of code, all right? So we don't actually see them. Bitcoin does not exist in physical form. It's actually a ledger on the internet. And when people are using these stable coins, how do they know at the moment that they're using them that their stable coin is actually backed one-to-one with this asset, which is, in most cases, will be the US dollar? But President Trump and Scott Bessent as well, it seems, and I think also the Commerce Secretary as well, are convinced that this is going to stablecoins are going to cement the dollar's dominance in the world as the world currency, and it will prevent anyone from being able to challenge the preeminence of the dollar. That's their calculation. We'll see what happens. But it's an interesting thing we need to be paying attention to, because pretty soon, over the next few years, people are going to be using these coins, or I keep using the word coin as if it's a physical thing, and it's not. These tokens are, I guess, in Walmart and in stores, and especially online. and it's going to become a part of our economic activity. The world is changing very quickly. Some people are saying that this is actually the sort of a stealth CBDC, central bank digital currency. And you remember that I've spoken a lot about CBDCs in the past, about how they represent financial tyranny. And the IMF and the World Bank have been working very hard to introduce CBDCs into the global financial sphere. The European Central Bank already is putting out its CBDC. And the reason that CBDCs are financial tyranny is because they can be programmed. They can be programmed. So, for example, you'll receive your paycheck in a CBDC, and you'll find that it has an expiration date. The money has an expiration date. You're not allowed to save it. You have to spend it by a certain date, just like a supermarket coupon. Or you're not allowed to spend it on certain things, right? Certain things that the government doesn't like. Or the government sort of looks at your health records and say, hey, you know what? You're not allowed to spend this on beer and pizza. All sorts of mischief it will become possible with CBDCs. And some people are concerned that this Genius Act is going to bring about CBDC in a stealthy way, because President Trump has already said that during my administration, there will be no CBDCs, there will be no central bank digital currencies. Well, we'll see. But, these things happen in various convoluted ways, and you look back and say, hey, I never intended for that to happen. The law of unintended consequences. But we'll have to see what happens with this Genius Act. But it is something that we need to pay attention to. It passed the Senate. It still has to pass the House. And then President Trump needs to sign it. And at least in its current form, it looks like President Trump will be willing to sign it because he believes that this is going to strengthen the dollar's position in the world, not necessarily its value vis-a-vis other currencies, which he continues to try to push down, but at least the role of the dollar in world trade. And maybe this is the way that he thinks that the United States can put to rest this stuff with the BRICS nations and their own what they call a currency. But this person in the New York Times does bring up a couple of points that I think maybe we can look at them either in a positive or negative light. The growing value of cryptocurrency is resurrecting one of the most notorious features of the Wild West. Just as stagecoach drivers of the 19th century were ambushed by gold-seeking, gun-toting bandits, crypto holders and their families are increasingly finding themselves victims of violent kidnappings. Well, I think there's a bit of fear-mongering going on here. There have been a few cases of this happening, yes. And are they increasing? Well, yeah, there was one, and then there was a second one, and then there was a third one. So in that sense, you can say that it is increasing, but it's still very, very rare. If Donald Trump and his allies have their way in Congress, America could soon see a resurgence of other features of that turbulent century. And, people really are down on the 19th century, aren't they? That was the battle days. And so in the 20th century, we got the Federal Reserve and we got the income tax, and now we're living happily ever after. This is what Elizabeth Warren and Jerome Powell and apparently this author as well want us to believe. Features of that turbulent century when bank failures, personal bankruptcies, and financial instability also occurred regularly. Well, let's remind this gentleman that the worst financial instability, in other words, the Great Depression, happened after the Federal Reserve was created, after the income tax was instituted, and the current instability also, cannot be ignored either. What would unleash this chaos is a piece of legislation known as the Genius Act. In its efforts to give crypto a patina of government authority and legitimacy, the Genius Act would give hundreds, perhaps even thousands of American companies the ability to issue their own currencies. Imagine Walmart issuing a Walmart coin and Amazon doing the same with an Amazon coin, enabling them to bypass the banking system and credit card networks. The Trump administration argues that the Genius Act would take our country to a modern future, but what they seem to forget is that America had a similar banking system more than 150 years ago, and it unleashed chaos and financial ruin. Lawmakers should think twice before passing this piece of legislation. Of course, interestingly, actually, what this person is saying is that the Genius Act will take us closer to what the Chattanooga Constitution requires. The Chattanooga Constitution does not like central banks, right? It says the government cannot establish a central bank. And it also says that no bank can have more than 1% of the banking market. And so, yes, in the Chattanooga, I expect that there will be a Walmart coin and a, what else did he say? Amazon coin and so forth and so forth. Because these companies or individuals will be able to be their own bank. The focus of the Genius Act is a type of crypto called a stablecoin, whose value is intended to be tethered to another, more stable asset, like the dollar. If the act is passed, stablecoins could be issued either by federally insured banks, such as Bank of America, or by companies such as Walmart and Amazon. Companies that issue less than $10 billion worth of coins could have their currencies regulated by a state. The rest would fall under the jurisdiction of federal regulators. The intent, evidently, is to let 1,000 cryptos flourish. Well, right now, there are actually millions of cryptos. I don't know if this person has checked recently, but I've actually lost count. I don't even check anymore. There are actually millions of cryptos now. And most of them are, by the way, garbage. And I think people realize this. The Act specifies that issuers should hold $1 of liquid assets, like U.S. Treasury securities, for every $1 stablecoin they distribute. This proposal bears an uncanny resemblance to the way America's monetary system functioned from the mid-1830s until the Civil War, a period known as the free banking era. Oh, no, we don't want freedom, do we? At the time, Americans, like many today, were deeply suspicious of elites and of concentrated financial power. Okay, yes, thank you. In 1832, President Andrew Jackson vetoed a bill renewing the charter of the Bank of the United States, which was an attempt by, although he doesn't admit it, it was an attempt by the financial elite of London to basically reestablish America as a British colony, not politically, but financially. And so Jackson vetoed the bill renewing the charter. And so from 1832 until the Fed was established in the early 20th century, there was no central bank in America. And this person say, hey, that was the bad old days, arguing that it favored wealthy interests at the expense of the common people. But in vetoing its renewal, he threatened to leave the United States woefully short of banking services. Over the next few decades, about half of the states passed laws that allowed any people with a minimum amount of their own funds to open a bank. All right, well, sounds to me like the Chattanooga Constitution, similar to what is being proposed by the Genius Act. All banks were entitled to issue their own dollars as long as they held $1 of collateral for every $1 issued. Sometimes the system worked, particularly in states like New York, where strict regulation ensured that banks held enough assets to back up their currency. But in others, those assets were sometimes all but worthless, resulting in panics and bank runs. You're right, like there haven't been any panics and bank runs in the 20th century, right? Residents of states like Michigan, where regulation was lax, found themselves holding the bag. One estimate places the losses to Michigan residents from discounted or worthless banknotes as high as $4 million, almost half the state's income in 1840. So yes, there will be successes and there will be failures. And the idea is that we copy the successes, we multiply the successes, and we learn from the failures. So the fact that there were failures in the 19th century does not mean that the system necessarily failed. Even when the currency didn't collapse, 18 states with 18 different regulatory systems resulted in different banks issuing different banknotes, all trading at different prices. That created confusion since the recipient of a dollar could not always be sure what it was worth. Shopkeepers would have to inspect each and every dollar offered by prospective customers, rejecting some and accepting others at a discount. Customers wouldn't even know exactly how many of their dollars they were paying for an item until shopkeepers concluded that unwieldy process. It destroyed something every society needs, the singleness of money. Okay, well, that may be, and the Constitution does give the Congress, the United States Constitution, Congress the authority to coin money, That is true. And if that can be applied to have sort of a consistent money throughout the world, I guess that could be true. But people will use what they want for money. People will use seashells. People will use gold. Some people these days are using Bitcoin or stable coins already. People are using stable coins even now to transfer value from one country to another. It's happening even now. And money, what is money, is actually decided by people who are using it. Gold didn't become money because some government, even the Roman Empire, decided that this is going to be money. No, gold became money because people like to use it as money. They say, hey, look, this thing, this yellow particular rock, it doesn't change. You can burn it and it just melts, but it doesn't go away. And it's scarce. It's relatively easy to transport, certainly easier than big stones or even, and it's scarce, so that it's better than seashells. So people began to use gold. And then the governments adopted it as money. And so these economic professors who write for the New York Times, they don't decide what money is. And eventually, people will come down probably to one thing, because it's better if you just have one, like you said, the singleness of money. Now, right now in the world, we have a lot of different monies, right? A lot of different money, and they're being, the exchange rate is changing day by day and every day. All right, so just to let you know that this is coming down the pike, let's continue to be wary of the CBDCs. Okay, let's see here. I wanted to do this one. And this, I guess you probably already are aware of this, but about the No Kings protests being, Trojan horse for radical, violent leftists. Kind of an obvious point, but let's go through this anyway. Legacy outlets are giving glowing coverage of No Kings rallies while ignoring the violence that follows. That's what they do, isn't it? So the No Kings rallies went off without a hitch from coast to coast, and thankfully, I think there were a couple of people killed in Minnesota, not in connection to the rallies themselves, but to still, surrounding this whole situation. And other people were hurt, but overall, I think our prayers were answered, that we came through that relatively well. And they were peaceful. Great news, right? That must mean the rioting and violence are over. Think again. This is the same script we saw with Black Lives Matter movement, and we know exactly how it ends. When I warned in my Fox News op-ed last week that the No Kings rallies would provide cover for violent Antifa, anarchists and other thugs, every prediction came true, not hypothetically, but in brutal, tangible form across the Pacific Northwest. Take Seattle, where I live. On June 14th, an estimated 70,000 protesters marched peacefully from Capitol Hill to the Seattle Center to decry the Trump administration. Just as expected, the rally was without incident, with little more than minor vandalism and the normal unhinged, angry messaging from the radical left complaining about authoritarianism and fascism, two concepts the average activist can't even define. I'm sure that means can't. Yet once the crowd began to disperse, militants readying their black bloc gear, shielded, hood, masked, stepped forward. They torched property, plastered federal buildings with graffiti, and hurled frozen water bottles at cops. They even concussed a local independent journalist, Cam Higby, for having the audacity to document their crimes. At one point, they hold me down. I'm in a headlock. They're choking me, and this guy comes up and he punches me in the face twice, in the head twice. He then kicks me in the face. I pull out pepper spray, deploy it in his face, and then he cries like a baby for the next 10 minutes. Higby explained on my Seattle-based talk radio show. Spokane, too, fell victim. Spokane, if you're not an American, is in eastern Washington state. Fell victim. Originally billed as peaceful, the rally in the eastern Washington city devolved into disorder and defiance, 11 arrests, and local authorities scrambling to contain escalating violence. Again, the crowd was mostly peaceful until the moment it wasn't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So then, Portland. So make no mistake that No Kings organizers billed the rallies as democratic and peaceful, knowing that it would provide the perfect cover for violence. Left-wing media would focus on the peaceful rallies while ignoring or downplaying the extremists enabled to continue assaulting police and sowing chaos on our streets. This was not accidental. It was strategic. Radicals leveraging liberal goodwill to infiltrate and destabilize, and they succeeded. So what comes next? Wash, rinse, repeat. It's precisely what happened in 2020, as I write about extensively in my book, What's Killing America, Inside the Radical Left's Tragic Destruction of Our Cities, when I went undercover to infiltrate Antifa. On Tuesday, Portland Antifa again targeted ICE property with federal agents making several arrests. The armed activists have maintained an around-the-clock occupation around the property, and we anticipate this will continue throughout the summer. So forth. And so the No Kings movement is not the end, it's the beginning. Think Summer of Love 2.0. That was, 1968. Only with better branding and even more media complicity. Just like BLM, the radicals are banking on America being too distracted, too naive, and too beaten down to see what's really going on. They show up in force, wrap themselves in words like justice and freedom, then use that shield to justify terrorizing communities under the guise of activism. These are not organic uprisings. They are part of a billion-dollar national strategy. Peaceful protests are the Trojan horse. The radicals inside, they're waiting, and the media is letting them. So this is the kind of situation where someone might pull off or plan a false flag operation. Someone who is frustrating with the inability to deal with the left in this way. Someone who's frustrated with President Trump's refusal to go to war with Iran. Someone who's frustrated with what's happening or not happening in China and East Asia. Or on the other hand, on the other side of the spectrum, someone who just wants to make America take the next step towards its eventual or presumed destruction. There are many types of people types of organizations who might be planning something. And that could be happening in the next weeks or months. No, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. And nobody knows right now. So let's continue to pray. Let's be vigilant and be aware of our surroundings. My wife and I have this app on our phones where we always know where each other are. And I think probably that may be a good idea for families to adopt that kind of, it's a matter of security. It's not a matter of trust, it's not a matter of, where were you last night, that kind of thing. But it's a matter of security, and so that when something comes down, you know where everybody is, and you can gather your family members and take steps to protect yourselves. All right. Today is Friday. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday. God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.